I'm Thel Woods. My company is Crowdfunding Services. We're located in Kalamazoo, and we've been actually formed since May 25th of 2012. But we've been waiting to make it possible to do all kinds of crowdfunding on a community-centric basis.
All right, my name's Stuart McDonald. I'm with Boomerang Studios, formerly with NBC in Flint, Michigan, and I'm here to see what crowdfunding is all about.
Well, my name's Michael Flowers. I'm a junior over at Adrian College, play on the men's volleyball team, and a business student going into marketing. I've heard about crowdfunding through Lenawee Now, which I internshipped over this past summer, and I heard that crowdfunding is a new program that they're doing here in the Michigan state that helps out small businesses be able to open up their company within any type of community. Well, I'm actually starting on a startup company right now, which is established being New Flow, which is a social media consulting firm that we want to help those small businesses and be also to push forth the involvement of college students and the environment to all mingle together and really make Adrian College a college community. And I'm looking forward to seeing what this crowdfunding event has to offer and take as many useful information as I can.
My name is Bob Valdez. I'm a business owner. Our business is Cakes and Shakes down in Blissfield, and I just come here to find out a little bit more about crowdfunding. I kind of know a little bit about it, but I'd like to find out a lot more about it.
Hi, I'm Amy Bergman with OSB Community Bank, and OSB is just proud to be part of this crowdfunding initiative to strengthen our local economies and help grow our communities.
Okay. Dean Thompson, Senior Commercial Lender at OSB Community Bank. I'm here to learn more about crowdfunding as well as being a partner with the Tecumseh Brew Company.
Director for the City of Adrian, and I am passionate, capital P, about crowdfunding. So I had the good fortune to be involved in the process that resulted in this meeting today in Michigan, leading the state, leading the nation in crowdfunding, and I'm thrilled that you are here, and we're looking for people to spread the gospel. So bear in mind that's kind of going to be what we'll go right here and just go over.
Ed Montalvo with Living in Lenawee Realty, new company out of Tecumseh. Just came here to learn a little bit about what's going on.
Great, thanks, Ed.
Kyle DeLid, General Manager, co-founder of Tecumseh Brewing Company. We're the first company going through and utilizing the mechanism of crowdfunding in the state.
Dean Thompson, OSB Community Bank, associated with the Colonies guys. We're on the financing end of it.
Karina Mills, President OSB Community Bank, and I'm here to learn more about crowdfunding so we can help other businesses.
Tim Schmidt, co-founder, brewer, Tecumseh Brewing Company, here to learn.
Yes, and to brag too.
Yeah.
Eric.
Eric Potter, Chomp Burger, here to learn a little bit more about crowdfunding as well.
Kirk Valentine, Sphere Project Management, just here to learn about the process.
Joe Matash, formerly with TC3, as well. I'm here to learn about crowdfunding and understand the options.
Now, independent and looking for opportunities.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Taylor.
Tim Sefton from Sefton Motors, and just here to learn a little bit more about crowdfunding.
Great.
John Taylor, downtown Adrian building owner, just here to learn more about crowdfunding.
I'm Mike Allsaver. I'm an attorney with Robinson, Kirky, and O'Connell, and serve on the downtown development authority board with Chris. In addition to this here, I'm interested in the topic.
Great, thank you.
I'm Gary Cliff with Cliff Buick GMC, and I'm just newly appointed to the DDA. And I'm here because of Chris Miller, so thank you very much.
My apologies.
To him or us?
All of you. Absolutely.
This is too soft. Bob Valdez, a small business owner in Blissfield. Just coming to learn more about crowdfunding.
Right.
David Thomas, owner operator Culver's of Adrian. Sorry I'm late. Here to support the great crowdfunding cause.
Very good. Right up front.
I'm Stuart McDonald, formerly with NBC and back here in Adrian now. And I'm now reopening my company Boomerang Studios, and I'm looking for opportunity here to help everybody who needs video production for crowdfunding. So.
Dave Brown Felder, Daily Telegraph. Good. Important to check? Yes. Right, I'm there for you. Good. And Blue Store. The handsome young man in the corner who slipped in almost unobtrusively.
Who failed to notice there was a door here. David Munson, Goddard Real Estate.
Vicki Schmucker with We Photo. I'm here to learn and to take photos.
I'm Thel Woods from Crowdfunding Services in Kalamazoo. I'm here because Chris is here. This is a fantastic leader in this area, so I'm over here to. I want to get one of his buttons for one thing.
I'm holding out on giving it to him. Great.
Sarah Stanley with Lenawee Now, and I'm here as a supporter of crowdfunding.
Jim Robinson, Lenawee Now.
Leah Carswell, and I'm an intern at Lenawee Now.
Alex Murray. I'm a freelance graphic designer for Daywalker Designs.
Michael Flowers, and I'm here to start up a business in the Lenawee County with the help on the crowdfunding industry.
Back corner.
And here's the Adrian Area Chamber of Commerce. We've been a supporter of crowdfunding since Amy Cortez came the first time, and we're here to learn more too.
Great.
Chris Renwick, I'm the news director at WLEN, just here to cover the event and let people know more about crowdfunding.
Covering the event implies you know something about it.
I know everything about crowdfunding.
Excellent, good. All right.
That's good. Dave Maxwell, I'm with SCORE, Service Corps retired executives. I'm trying to keep one step ahead of my clients.
All right.
And I'm Paula Holtz. I work for the City of Tecumseh.
What do you do for the city of Tecumseh?
I work for the Economic Development Office. Thank you for asking.
And you, young lady in the door?
I'm Wanda Pickles, and I'm just here to understand and get educated.
Great, bring this around. Okay, so we have an idea of who's in the room. Thanks very much for being here. And then I want to introduce these two people up front, so I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and I'll tell you if they did a good job. Okay, go ahead. Young lady, you go first.
Hi, everybody. I'm Amy Cortez. I'm a journalist. I write a lot about business and finance and economics and sometimes food and things like that for the New York Times and other publications. And I wrote a book, Chris Miller's Coffee, called Local Investing, about the local investing movement. It covers a lot of things from community development loan funds to local investing groups to direct public offerings and local stock exchanges. And I do have a chapter on crowdfunding, however, this came out before the Jobs Act. So there's a lot that's happened since, and I've been covering it very closely. So happy to be here and share what I can with you.
Thank you. She did well.
Hi everyone, my name is Kevin Hitch. I'm one of the founders of Local Stake. We're a online investment crowdfunding platform. We're based out of Indianapolis, but we have now kind of operations in a few different states, including one of our big focuses is Michigan now. Businesses raise funding on Local Stake, including Tecumseh Action Brewery is the first now Michigan-based business to use the new Michigan crowdfunding law, and they're currently raising funds on our platform. So congratulations to you guys. We've also just announced a partnership with the Michigan Municipal League to roll out a kind of statewide crowdfunding program to promote investment crowdfunding in Michigan. So now that MILE, if you're all familiar, the Michigan Invest Locally exemption that was passed in Michigan, I think at the end of the year by the governor, Michigan Municipal League is now kind of taking it in their hands, kind of promote it now throughout the state. It was kind of announced yesterday. And we're going to work with them to help promote investment crowdfunding in Michigan. So happy to answer any questions from a investment crowdfunding platform point of view, either if it's, what type of, funds do businesses raise in crowdfunding, what type of securities, how much, things like that. Happy to answer all of those for you.
Perfect. Great job, except for you spoiled the surprise, but that's okay. So one of the first things that we wanted to do is actually officially announce the very first Michigan business to raise money under the Michigan Invest Locally exemption, also known as MILE. We'll see whether MILE catches on or not, but we actually had one of the city council members from Saline, a guy named David Rhodes, suggested that it should have been State of Michigan Invest Locally, and then it could be SMILE, which is pretty good. Anyway, Tecumseh Brewing, come on out, Tim and Kyle, and we want to do that, and let's have OSB. So This could hardly be more exciting and more cool for Lenawee County and for these guys, and we're just really excited about it. I'm just going to give you a quick kind of overview of what happened as the process with the legislature went forward in the fall last year. We could tell pretty quickly that we were going to get this done. And in fact, we pretty optimistically said we think we're going to get it done before the end of the year, not knowing that we would be right. So that was pretty cool. And so at some point in that time, us economic developers were aware of these guys in Tecumseh that were looking to start a crowdfunding or start a microbrewing business and had purchased the former Cowboy Grill. At what address on 128? 128. Well, took him a second, but he got it. That's good. At 128. And so I asked Paula's permission to talk to them, and she said, okay, you know, and then she monitored me. I talked to him and said, look, you know, I know you guys are out raising capital, and like all entrepreneurs at the front end, or entrepreneurs who've already got small business and are trying to get more capital, there is a struggle there. And they've been working, how long, Paul? 2.5 years or something like that? Some crazy amount of time.
How quick, Kyle?
A full 3 years trying to raise capital to get a business started. And doesn't it seem like it should be easier than that?
Yeah.
Yes, that's good. This is an interactive one, just so you know, so I'll stop and look at you. So yes, it should be easier than that. And guess what? It's going to be easier than that because of crowdfunding in Michigan. So we're excited about that. Anyway, met with Kyle. In fact, it was during Apple Upton, I think. And we stood over by the Ferris wheel while his kids ran around and his wife ran around after him. And we talked about crowdfunding and the possibility, what we said, the hopeful probability that it was going to be an option for them. And so we've kept that conversation going. Paul has allowed us to continue to talk to her client. And they have now made the decision, thanks to OSB and Dean and company, to put together a financial package that includes conventional financing through OSB and unconventional and groundbreaking funding through this crowdfunding campaign. So this is the first Michigan business to launch this again right here in Lenawee County. So give them a big round of applause. In addition to that being exciting, it's also a really, really cool story, and I'm going to tell a little bit of it because I'm afraid they're going to mess it up. So, or they might not brag on themselves as much as they ought to. So, Tim is the son of the former mayor of Tecumseh. What's his name again? Harvey. That's it. Yeah. Harvey Schmidt. Are you a U of M guy?
No.
Okay, you're not a U of M guy. So you're the workhorse, right?
Yeah.
And has been brewing for 10 years? Something like that? 8 years? Okay, so we could stretch it to 10. Rounding up to 10 years. Great. And you're not a head brewer, is that correct? Yeah. What's the name of the company?
Blue Tractor Barbecue and Brewery.
Okay, in Ann Arbor.
In Ann Arbor,
yes. And so a native Michigander, grew up in Tecumseh, you know, wants to make a difference in his own community. The other guy, much different story. Where are you from again? California, that's on the west, right? So a California guy that came to Michigan to go to the University of Michigan, right? And met him in a bar somewhere.
Yeah, Blue Tractor. We worked together.
Working together at Blue Tractor. And that's such a fabulous story because what do we hear all the time? We want to retain talent in Michigan, right? We don't want to, especially if they come to Michigan, we'd love to have them stay. And where do all the really smart, creative people build businesses? In California, right? Not this smart, creative guy. And why did you decide to stay in Michigan? And give the right answer right there.
Well, we thought there was more opportunity out here for a young couple to start a business, buy a home.
Okay. Did you journalists hear that? Make sure that's in the articles tomorrow. So, more opportunity in Michigan than in California to buy a business, start a business, build a business. And that was before crowdfunding made that decision. Think how much easier that would have been now. So anyway, so what would you guys like to say about the business? Tell us a couple minutes about what your plans are.
Well, our plan is we're going to be a microbrewery. We're going to distribute. We're going to start with a 3-barrel system, brand new system. It gives us more flexibility to have multiple beers, more than your traditional brewery. We're going to have 24 taps, 4 movie sodas that we make, the pop, which Michiganers call red pop. We have 4 pops.
So it's okay.
Yeah.
We can try some.
And then up to 20 beers at any given time. But we have a ton of experience in the industry, so at this point it's just getting the rest of the financing in place so that we can get in there and start moving some walls around and get open. But we've been doing this for a very long time, and now we've been working on the project and financing the project itself for also a very long time. And thanks to crowdfunding, this opens up so many doors. And actually, just on the way in today, we just went live today, and we had our first investor sign on, and it's somebody that neither one of us know. So it's a very, very cool thing. Right off the bat, you can tell that this thing's going to work. It's very cool.
And Dean, could you talk to us a little bit about, one of the challenges when you're doing something new is to integrate that new with the existing. And certainly when it comes to finances or legal stuff, those are the two most challenging hurdles. And the fact that OSB has agreed as a conventional source of capital to throw in with us, I think says a lot about the really smart leadership that's happening at OSB right now. So talk a little bit about the kind of the process that you went through up to this point in time, and then you guys making the decision that you were going to partner with a crowdfunding campaign.
Sure. Well, I mean, honestly, it came down to the need for additional capital. And there's a certain point that we can lend to, that we're comfortable with, and I think at one point we kind of thought we hit a roadblock, up until December, until this stuff was passed. But then once we started hearing some more about it, and talking with Tim and some other individuals about crowdfunding, so let's go down that venue and see. There's a way for you to raise the capital that we need to make our financing work. So let's see what it does. You see how this works. And after learning some more stuff about it, it just fits with what we're looking to do. We're all about small business at OSB, and it's perfect.
Great. Well, congratulations, and congratulations to all OSB and the courage to make an out-of-the-box decision that's really got great foresight. And any questions for these guys right now? Okay, that's great. Let's start the back.
Yeah, for the banker, what's the proportion of crowdfunding versus conventional? Just out of curiosity.
It's right around a 50-50. Probably more like a 40-60.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Who's the 60?
The 60 is the bank. Yeah.
Okay. Other questions? Yeah, Tim.
How much funding were you looking to raise for the whole project?
Well, just going back a step too, we initially generated $145,000 in investment through family and friends before all this came around, and then we just hit a wall. We're shooting for now with $200,000 from OSB. Now we're shooting for 150 to 175. That'll give us enough working capital to be comfortable and get open and get ready. So approximately $300,000 investment, but $150,000 of it would be from crowdfunding through local state. I think that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Yep.
How do each of us here go out and invest in your company?
Well, you can have several ways. Well, actually one way, but there's several ways to get there. Through our Facebook page, or just go to Local Stake and look up Tecumseh Brewing Company, and it'll pop up, and we'll give you everything you need to know. These guys have been able to consolidate. If we printed up everything we had, from financial projections to business plans, it's probably about that thick. They consolidated it down to a 25-slide PowerPoint, so it breaks down everything you need to know from. It starts with a disclaimer all the way through our experience, menu, and all the way down to what the investors actually get in return. So it's very, very cool what we do, but it's easy to find on localstake.com. Also through our Facebook page, we have links through there as well. So that's
great. Other questions? Yep.
Did you contribute to, or were you involved in the crowdfunded movie about beer that was made just recently?
No, they want to watch it.
Oh, yeah. It's quite a thing. They went out and raised money on the non-equity type crowdfunding, and
like the Kickstarter
made this
stuff.
Kickstarter stuff. So it worked pretty well for them. So they got a really good. I'll get it.
Yeah, I can see that. Sounds cool.
Okay. Any other questions? Ann.
Yeah. What do your investors receive?
Well, it's going to be. Basically, the way it is every month we do a revenue share. 7% goes back to the investors until each investor receives 1.5 times their investment. So it goes from a floor of 500 all the way up to 10,000, which is the mandated limit, the maximum you can invest in the business per year. And so if you invest 10,000 over 3 to 5 years of repayment, depending on how well we do, from month to month, we'll eventually get a $15,000 return.
Other questions? None of the journalists have asked any really good questions yet, have they?
The $10,000 limit, that's just for the non-accredited, though, right?
That's correct. Yep. And we're gonna kind of go back over the basic fundamentals. So, but you can keep writing. That's okay. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
How long do you expect the crowdfunding loan to last?
The repayment period?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
No more than 5 years is typically what we shoot for. It's a kind of a local state way. Okay. That's why we've done 7% instead of 5, just to make sure we can get back to the investors within 3 to 5 years. I mean, again, it's projections. So I mean,
Sure.
while they've checked out, we've been through it for the last 2.5, 3 years. They've checked out. You never really truly know how soon it could be. Get it back in 2.5 years. You know, it could be 5, maybe 6. But we kind of did the high end of 5 years.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Any idea how soon you're going to be open?
Well, it's a 90-day period of through local stake. So if it were to take the full 90 days, in that time period, we can actually apply for our license now. They say it should take 65 days. That's what they say. So hopefully it takes about 65 days, 60 to 90 days. Then we get the equipment going. It could take 2 to 3 months to get the new equipment because we're getting it made brand new. And then 2 months of brewing, we should be open. Our goal is to be open October 1st, no later than October 1st. We have several things in October we want to take part in, including Apple Pumpkin Festival in Tecumseh, 12th and 13th. And the following week, we want to have our first annual Tecumseh Brewing Company Disc Golf Tournament down here in Adrian. And then the week after that, it'll be the Detroit Beer Festival. So it's kind of a nice hot month to get started in. So we want to hit the ground running. So October 1st would be our goal.
Maybe this is a question for later, but what about an existing business, small business? I just wanted to know how this would work. Yeah. And my wife would kill me, but I forgot to say I'm from Cakes and Shakes down in Blissville.
She would kill me. So we all have that advantage over Bob right now. So if you need a good deal on a cake right now, I'm suggesting that Bob would be happy to work that out for you. We are going to cover that later on. So yeah. So any more questions for these guys? Okay, one more, Michael.
How much of an expense, or how much of your own time was spent putting together the documents you needed to get registered as a local stake in order to be able to do this?
We had our business plan and projections done for a couple of years. So all those documents, we've got our ID number and we've got everything to be a real existing business for 2 years. Once we got involved with local stake, we sent out all the documents to them and they consolidated. They had to do, there's some legal stuff they had to do as well to get us up and running in the state. But that took a couple months. Yeah, 1 to 2 months. It was actually pretty fast. We had everything pretty much ready, but we had to kind of consolidate it.
Anyone? Going once? Going twice? They'll be around afterwards because you haven't really asked them much about beer, and I know you're all interested in that. Most of them are. So another big round of applause for these guys. All right, so we're going to now jump back kind of and talk about the nuts and bolts of the law. First of all, let me get an idea about how many people really know what crowdfunding is. So if you feel very confident, you have a solid idea about what crowdfunding is, go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, good. Pretty good number. And how many could pass a test about it?
That's what the questions are.
That's what the questions are. Excellent, Mr. Taylor. Always a help. Okay, so I'm going to go relatively fast on this. Please stop me if you have any questions or if I'm talking too fast or if what I said doesn't make sense. No, I better not go there or that could be trouble. All right. So the Michigan Invest Locally exemption, MILE, again, the best crowdfunding legislation in the country right now. And that's really cool because Michigan has a very interesting strategic advantage right now. Although Indiana, the second best state in the room, just passed a crowdfunding law. Is the governor signed it yet? No. The governor's reluctant to sign it, we understand. And they modeled their law, guess on whose?
Wisconsin.
Wrong. Anybody else have a guess?
Washington.
Michigan, thank you very much. They modeled theirs on Michigan, that's right. Because the Michigan model is going to turn out to be the really smart one as it all goes. So I'm going to go backwards just slightly to talk about crowdfunding. In 2012, a couple of guys, is it 3? How many are in Crowdfunding Capital Associates? Sherwood and
mainly
2 guys. So mostly 2 guys In fact, that was about in 2010. They went to Washington, D.C., and they had this really radical idea that people in their own communities should be able to invest in their own businesses. And you should be able to get a lot of people to invest a little money into a project, and those people should be able to make money from that. So how many are familiar with Kickstarter, Indiegogo, those things? Okay, so most of you are. The difference between what those guys do and what Michigan crowdfunding, what Michigan's investment crowdfunding is that you can get a return on your investment. So, for example, and I'm going to talk about Blues and Brews for a second, just a second. All right, don't mind. Yeah, I wanted you guys to remember. What's the date of Blues and Brews?
October 19th.
October 19th. So that's a date you got to remember that. October 19th, Blues and Brews. But one of the participants, one of the driving forces for Blues and Brews in Adrian is Cotton Brewery. And so they set up a microbrewing business. They've been operating about a year and a half, something like that, been up and running in Adrian. And they were looking to raise some capital for that, not a whole bunch, but a little bit of capital to buy some stuff. And so they established a Founders Club, which my wife and I joined, even though I don't drink beer. I know that's like heresy in the room at the moment, but I'm the designated driver. I'm always so we invested $100 as members of the Founders Club, and we got a T-shirt and a growler. So not really a return on the investment. A nice little trinket or reward for getting involved. But we did it because we believed in what they wanted to do and we supported it. So that's what Indiegogo is about. That's what Kickstarter is about. You give them a donation and you receive some sort of a compensation, often a T-shirt or tickets to something. There have been some circumstances like 3D printers were actually initially moved forward through crowdfunding, and the initial investors got a 3D printer back when it was produced ultimately. That's worked fairly well in some circumstances, not so well in others. But in any event, so that's rewards-based crowdfunding, and what we're doing is investment-based crowdfunding. So these two guys went to Washington, D.C. sometime in 2010, early 11, and they spent a year literally lobbying Washington, D.C. to get a crowdfunding bill passed in Washington, D.C. And they got it done. In April of 2012, what was the date, Amy? Do you remember April? Was it 12?
April 2012, it was signed into law.
Yeah. So anyway, they got a bill passed called the Jobs Act, which wasn't about jobs, it was all about investing. And so entrepreneurs all over the country were so excited because there was going to be this really cool opportunity to raise capital, because the number one problem entrepreneurs have, and they come in my office all the time, they come in Paula's office all the time, I have this great idea, we can raise $20,000, we need $50,000, have you got a grant for $30,000 you can give me today? And that's what we get all the time. And of course the answer is no, we don't have a grant for $30,000 we can get you all the time, we need to find capital some other way. So businesses have trouble finding capital, accumulating capital, and then often they open without having had enough capital front end, so because of the lack of capital, they fail often in the first 12 to 18 months. And capital is the problem. So these guys got this great idea, passed through actually quite overwhelmingly the House and the Senate bipartisan. It's MOM, it's apple pie, it's the community investing in itself. It's the free market system. It's got all those really great buzzwords around it. And so went through the House, Senate, the President signed it, sent it over to the Securities and Exchange Commission and said, write the policy for it, have it done in July, and then we'll roll this out. So now we're almost 2 years later. Guess what has not happened?
Roll-up.
No roll-up, exactly. The SEC is still writing policy. What's your prediction?
I'm hearing that there might be a new round of comments and maybe towards the end of the year.
Right. Which is pretty similar to what we heard last year and what we heard the year before and everything else. So all of those entrepreneurs, again, new and existing businesses who got excited about this, they did what entrepreneurs do. They looked for another way to solve the problem. They didn't just give up and walk away. And that other way to solve the problem has turned out to be intra-state exemptions that an SEC has, and in some cases there's a different exemption. You're going to mention reggae a little bit, won't you? Thank you. All right, good. All right. So another way to skin the cat, basically. And so several states, was Georgia or Iowa first? No, I heard Iowa yesterday. I thought it was Georgia. Kansas. Or Kansas. Kansas did it first.
You know what? I'll cover this in my presentation.
Okay, this is going to be covered in Amy's presentation. So anyway, that comes to us, right? Ultimately, it comes to us. And somebody here spoke very passionately about this not too long ago and really fired up Michigan, and Michigan passed this bill, which is, again, the best investment crowdfunding bill out there. So here are the big numbers that are important for you to pay attention to. Number one, unaccredited investors, that's 97, or non-accredited investors, that's 97% of the population, almost everybody in the room. can now invest up to $10,000 in one company in 1 year, and there is no other limit. So they can invest in as many companies they want. They can do 10 a day if they want to. They can invest up to $10,000 in all those. So $10,000, one company, 1 year, and that's the only limit on it. And that's for non-accredited investors. Accredited investors under this bill and under federal law can invest as much money as they want to because they got lots. Accredited investors right now have a net worth of $1 million, not including their home, annual income if they're single of $200,000, married $300,000. So those are the big numbers. On the business side, a startup business like these guys, they don't have any financials, so we don't know if they know what they're talking about or not. We hope they do. We think they do. We're investing in them because we're crazy, right? No, we're not. We know them. That's why we're investing in them. Those guys can raise up to $1 million from those non-accredited investors. And again, no limit on accredited investors. So if some accredited investor comes up and says, I'd like to pay for the whole thing, you could do that. But actually, I would recommend against that. So anyway, so those are the big numbers. If they had audited financials, so let's say in a year, they decide we need more space, so it's busted at the seams. You have to wait out on the street on Chicago in Tecumseh to get into there. And the building next door is available, which it probably is, right? Might be. Hopefully. And they want to expand. They could do another campaign. At this point, they've got audited financials that they can now raise up to $2 million from those same non-accredited investors. So those are really the big numbers. $1 million for non-accredited investors in a business that doesn't have audited financials, $2 million for it does, and $10,000. So those are the big numbers. Okay, so that's the quick snapshot. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff. We'll also get to questions as we go forward. So now I'm going to introduce Amy Cortese. And it's actually Amy's fault that crowdfunding happened in Michigan. Because a year and a half ago, in this actual building, but not in this room, we're in the other room. No, we're down there. We're down there. We were in the big room. And a number of us have been kind of following this story for a while, locally, including David Thomas and Don Taylor. And we called Ann Hughes and said, hey, Ann, let's do an economic development luncheon. And would you help with it? Of course, Ann said what she always says, no, I'm busy. No, she said, yes, let's do that. And so Ann put together an economic development luncheon, thanks to the Adrian Area Chamber. And we invited Amy. Ann actually made that contact and got her to come. I don't know what you said, but good job to persuade Amy to come. Tim Robinson, of course, was there, and the LEC was heavily involved in that. Now they're Lenawee Now, so you have to remember that. LEC in the past, Lenawee Now. I guess that works, right? Lenawee Now. And so Amy came in and she talked about her book, like she's going to do now. And she inspired 2 people in particular, or 4 people in particular, 5 people. Yeah, because you were there, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, you had 4. And was Carrie there that day too?
Yep.
Right.
So that's Carrie's number 4, yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4.
And I'm 5.
Oh. You don't count, so you're not in our group.
Oh, that's true. I'm not in their group. I wasn't invited to be in their group, so I'm not sure what that meant. So she particularly inspired 5 people. So 4 of these guys actually sat down. So these guys plus Carrie Carrico sat down at the end of it, literally sat at the table at the end of the meeting and said, let's buy a building in downtown Adrian. Let's do. That was one of the things that Amy proposed. And they did. And they now own a building in downtown Adrian together with, didn't I see the owner of the business come in? Yeah. Yes. Red Paint Printing Building. Todd Harder, who's the owner of the building, is one of the investors. 23, is that what we started with?
24.
24 investors pooled their money, bought the building, and are now rehabilitating it. So it's a fantastic and extremely exciting story. What excited me was the crowdfunding piece. And so that's why we ultimately got in front of Nancy Jenkins, our own rep. Nancy understood the value of it. Instead of kind of looking at glazed over looks sometimes legislators get when you talk to them, she was actually taking notes. She took those to Lansing, got a bill written, went through the House, and was signed by the governor on the 30th of December. So Amy did all of this. So be prepared to be inspired. Amy Cortese. Give her a round of applause.
Thank you, Chris. I hope I can live up to that. He's been doing this all year. But I love coming here, and it's great to see some familiar faces. And really, it's the highest honor to have inspired what you guys have done here, because I'm a big admirer of what you've done here. So anyway, it's really great to be back here in what is truly the birthplace of crowdfunding in Michigan, right? Adrian, Michigan. And I'm just thrilled that I was here when it was just a twinkle in Chris Miller's eye. But a lot has happened since then, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that. But I did want to tell you too that we just spent 2 days in Lansing at the Capital Conference put on by the Michigan Municipal League, and everybody was talking about this crowdfunding bill and how it happened in Adrian and Lenawee County. So I think you should all be very proud. So I wanted to give a little context for why I think this is such an important trend. Because I do think local investing is at the intersection of some very powerful trends. So people are buying local and eating local, and there's growing interest in impact investing and companies that have a broader concern than just maximizing profit. We're also in the shift, in the middle of a major shift to a more collaborative economy, and this is helped along by technology. And in this kind of economy, individuals are more economically empowered. And finally, if you look around the world, there's this relocalization movement where towns and communities are trying to counter some of the negative effects of globalization and also prepare for challenges ahead, like climate change, by creating more resilient and sustainable communities. So I think we're just at the beginning of this trend. And actually, sometimes I like to add another thing here. Maybe it doesn't count as a mega trend, but I think it's certainly very germane to all of us in this room. And that's this sense that Washington, our federal government, is kind of broken. We have this gridlock and dysfunction. And I don't think we can look to the government to solve our problems, and I think we all know that. And our towns and communities have to become more self-reliant. And I think that's really what my book and the whole local investing movement and this whole mile crowdfunding legislation is really about. It's about tapping the capital that exists right here in our own communities to support the businesses that make them strong. So I usually talk about why it's important to invest locally and how local businesses create jobs and strong local economies and really make our neighborhoods and communities attractive places to live. And that's important when you're competing to attract and retain talent. But I think I'll just jump into one example, and it's a story from my book. And it's actually one from my neighborhood. So this is Brooklyn, where I live. It's actually Fort Greene, Brooklyn. So Brooklyn's a lot of little micro neighborhoods. So this is about a 5-minute walk from where I live. And so it's a lot of old brownstones. It's very racially mixed, very eclectic, creative community that lives there. But the one thing they did not have that they really wanted was an independent bookstore. There are a lot of writers that live here. So this was several years ago, and 2 women decided they wanted to open a bookstore in Fort Greene. So the people that lived there were so thrilled that they threw them a big party, even before they had found a spot. So of course, this was 2008, and we all know what happened then. The economy nearly melted down, and the bank pulled the loan that these 2 women were counting on to open the bookstore. So instead, they turned to the community that had welcomed them so warmly and reached out to them, and about 24 residents lent them a total of $70,000. And they could choose an interest rate between 2% and 4%, and then they also got a 30% discount on books for the length of the loan. So the bookstore opened in 2009, and believe it or not, it was profitable its first year. And so it does all those things that a local business should, right? It supports local charities, it hires locally, they feature local writers, and they host a lot of events. It's really become an integral part of the neighborhood. And people just love this bookstore, and I think the investors turned out to be the very best customers. And that's something I think that we see in a lot of these community capital deals. So the interesting thing is they could have crowdfunded this, right? Today they would crowdfund it. And I think the thing about crowdfunding is it takes away a lot of the uncertainties about a lot of these private deals. When you do a private deal like this, if you're relying on the friends and family exemption, a lot of these deals sort of operate in a gray area. And in fact, I'm pretty sure in this case, there were some rules violated. One investor found out about it on a blog, right? So that's kind of advertising. So I think by crowdfunding it sort of makes it much more efficient and makes it much less likely that a small business owner is going to unwittingly violate securities laws. And when you're talking about friends and family exemptions and pre-existing relationships, I mean, what is a friend in the age of Facebook, right? It's really, it's a tricky question. So that's why there was so much excitement around the Jobs Act. And I was really honored to actually be invited to the Rose Garden for the signing ceremony. And the air was electric. I mean, people felt like this was a really historic moment because it was really updating our securities laws for the first time in 80 years and making it possible for private businesses, locally owned businesses, to raise money from ordinary Americans. And I can't emphasize this enough because before the Jobs Act, it was easier for most people to invest in a company halfway around the world than one in their own backyard. So the Jobs Act can potentially be a game changer for local investing, but as Chris was alluding to, it's not looking that way. So we're still waiting. We're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of the law. We're still waiting for rules. We may wait as much as another year. But based on the rules that have been floated so far, it looks like it'll be really expensive and difficult for businesses to raise money under the Jobs Act. And one of the concerns, I mean, what happens in Congress is you have a simple bill and then it goes through 2 houses and it gets larded up with all sorts of stuff and it comes out the other end and it's unworkable. But they had some good intentions in mind. They were trying to protect investors, in particular to prevent fraud. With crowdfunding open the doors to fraud. But the best way to minimize risk, in my view, is to keep crowdfunding local, where there's more intimate knowledge of the market, and participants have social bonds and reputations that link them. And it's people like Peter Lynch and Warren Buffett have long advised, invest in what you know. It makes sense to invest in what you know. So these are just a few of the platforms that are taking a more local approach, and we'll hear from Kevin in a little bit. But the big news here, as Chris said, is interstate crowdfunding. So Kansas, of all places, was the first to put a law into effect, followed by Georgia, Wisconsin late last year, and then Michigan signed the law got in right at the last moment before 2014. And then Indiana has a bill waiting to be signed, as does, who's the other one? Maine. Or Maine signed first? Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of states waiting in the wing. And I do think the mile law is really great. I mean, first of all, it's amazing how it went from hearing to law in 2 months. I mean, that's almost unheard of. And Chris, of course, really, I mean, not get enough credit for really, seeing that idea and running with it and getting Nancy Jenkins and her staff to support that. And I won't go into the details, but suffice to say, it's much less simple and cumbersome than the Federal Jobs Act. What I wanted to talk about more was like, you know, where can this go? How is crowdfunding going to evolve? And you hear a lot about crowdfunding being a disruptive technology, right? I mean, people are writing that it's going to put banks and venture capitalists out of business. And I don't think that's the case. As much as it's a disruptive technology, it really has the potential to act as a catalyst and act as the glue that can bind together a local financial ecosystem and even act as a multiplier. So you can imagine crowdfunded capital working together hand in hand with institutional capital to maybe help a business secure a bank loan, for example, that it might not otherwise be able to get, or to give an angel investor or a VC that extra boost of confidence that they need to back a startup. Or maybe you'd have a corporation or a foundation or a government agency offer to match funds successfully raised through crowdfunding. So I think we're starting to see these kind of collaborations and partnerships come together, and I think we'll see a lot more of that. There's one example I'd like to mention. We don't have a lot of a track record here in the US with crowdfunding because it's so new, but investment crowdfunding has been taking place in the UK for 2 to 3 years now, by the way, with almost zero fraud. But there's one very interesting example. There's a platform called Funding Circle. They do crowd lending. They let any UK resident lend money to any UK small business. And to date, they've lent about 250 million British pounds to UK small businesses. But what's really interesting to me is that not only now are local governments putting money onto this Funding Circle platform, but the British government, the government of David Cameron, has injected a big chunk of stimulus funds, I think it was like 20 million British pounds, into this platform to help spur lending to small businesses because, like here, their big banks were just not getting the job done. I think, you know, it'd be great to see that kind of thing happen here where, you know, governments actually get behind crowdfunding and support it because it really is a form of economic development. So I just wanted to give a sense of the crowdfunding landscape, where it's going, and how it can help your communities. And as I said, it's not the only way to invest locally, but I think it's the most exciting, transformative, and even historic development to happen in a long time in this space. And there's one more point that I want to make about crowdfunding, and that is that it's not just about finance, it's also about marketing and branding and civic pride. So in addition to encouraging people to buy local, right, we all have buy local groups, we can now encourage them to invest local. And if that sounds funny to people, has anyone seen this? It's an ETF, so it's an exchange-traded fund that tracks Nashville area publicly traded companies. But I just love that tagline, own this town, right? And that's what it's about. Everybody wants to own a piece of where they live and share in that ownership and that prosperity. And they want to, by the way, take this ETF idea around to other areas. So the idea of an ETF, right, that's a publicly traded stock. So that brings up the question of liquidity. ETFs are publicly traded. With crowdfunding, we're talking about private companies. So how do you get your money back if you need it? And that's where this idea of a local stock exchange comes in. A lot of people don't realize that many years ago, we used to have dozens of local stock exchanges in this country. So they were in places like Buffalo, New York, and Wheeling, West Virginia, Boulder, Colorado, and there was one in Detroit. And what these markets did was bring together local capital with local enterprise, and they really fueled their regional economies. So this is the Detroit Stock Exchange. It was in operation from 1907 to 1976, and it was the public market for a lot of startup industries and companies whose ownership was primarily owned in Michigan. So in 1909, for example, there was a local startup called General Motors that went public on the Detroit Stock Exchange. And it was not for many years later that it actually sold shares on the New York Stock Exchange. And it's interesting because when you look up the GM IPO, they use the New York Stock Exchange date when it really happened earlier on the Detroit Exchange. So what happened? Advances in communications technology and also the Securities Acts of 1933 and 34 kind of took away the competitive advantages of these regional markets. And one by one, little by little, trading shifted to the New York Stock Exchange. And some regional markets either consolidated or merged or just went out of business. And where does that leave us today? Well, today our markets are global and efficient, but they're no longer serving the types of regional and local growth companies that they once did. And here again, Michigan is really a pioneer. Following on the heels of the crowdfunding law, Nancy Jenkins has introduced legislation to allow local stock exchanges in Michigan, so a Michigan local stock exchange. So this would allow any Michigan-based company to sell shares, and it could be bought and sold by any Michigan resident. So that bill might have, there's a little bit more discussion about it, I think, than there was with the crowdfunding bill. And by the way, the crowdfunding bill stands alone. This would be a nice bookend, but it's not completely necessary for it. But I do love this idea, and I think it's a great opportunity to get back to the true concept of a stock market, right? Which is to allocate capital to its most productive use, not to enable high-frequency trading and speculation. So someday, maybe you'll have a Michigan stock exchange. I think that would be great. And someday maybe these local exchanges will be a key part of that local financial ecosystem. So I'm wrapping up here, but I just want to say that I really, truly am excited about what you're doing here. And I don't think it's overstating it to say that this is a very historic time. And Michigan is really leading the way with crowdfunding. And if you think some of this sounds sort of inflated or hyperbolic, I just want to give a sense of what kind of impact this can have. So collectively, we Americans have $30 trillion in long-term securities. So by that I mean mutual funds, IRAs, pension funds, and the like. But almost all of it is invested in stocks and bonds of publicly traded corporations. So nothing in local. When you sign up for your 401k, there's no check the box for local companies. So it's kind of a misallocation of capital when you think about the fact that small business, local business is half the economy, yet we're all invested in large corporate stocks. So, and no one's saying, by the way, that you should move all your money to local companies, but a little bit can have a big impact. So 10%, 5%, even 1% could have a really big impact. 1% of 30 trillion, as it says here, is $300 billion. And just to put that in perspective, that's 10 times the amount of venture capital that's invested every year in this country. And it's equal to, 300 billion is equal to all the bank loans outstanding to small businesses today. So that's a lot of money if we each shift just 1%. So $300 billion for the Main Street economy. I like to say this is the way that we rebuild the economy, right? One community at a time with this sort of small shift. And I do believe that the nation, you know, a year from now, I can't wait to look back and see what effect that the Michigan law has had. And you know, I'm sure the ramp up will be slow. There's a lot of education to be done, but I bet even a year from now we'll be able to look back and tally up the impact it's had in terms of job growth and innovation and economic revitalization. And I do think that Michigan really has a unique opportunity here to really show the way and show really how to do crowdfunding and local investing right. So that's all I have, and thank you.
So the theoretical, the thinking about it, about community, translates now into an actual law that allows actual investment, and then you get a guy like Kevin Hitchen, founder and CEO of Local State, that takes that idea, that concept, that dream, and brings it to reality. So this is a guy who can see and understand the vision and then did the hard work. And I hope he spends some time talking about the hard work necessary to put a platform in place. So here's what Local State does. They make it possible for a business like Tecumseh Brewing Company to provide them with a set of materials. They do some significant due diligence with those materials. They put it together in a package that goes on the internet, on a website. And they do that all electronically. And then you, as an investor, and you all ought to invest. If you're not, I'm going to see the list later on. You're going to be in trouble. So we want you all to invest in Tecumseh Brewing. But for you as an investor, you get to go online, completely online, electronic payment, the whole 9 yards, all done online. It's as easy as it could possibly be, and that's because of the tremendous amount of work that Kevin has done back in the background. Kevin's background is in traditional investment, and like a lot of people that are involved in this crowdfunding movement, people that came out of traditional investment and got sick and tired of sending their clients money to the other side of the globe. It didn't make sense. They wanted to be able to, again, I love the invest in what you know. All of the great pontiffs of investment, all those gurus always talk about invest in what you know, but it's been literally impossible. Because what do we know best? The companies in our own communities. Those are the ones we see all the time. We know who owns them. We know who's good and who's not good. But it's been impossible for us to invest, and that changes. And because of what Kevin has done at Local State, it's going to be really easy for you to do it. So please give Kevin a round of applause.
Thank you. I don't have slides, but I'll talk, and I will definitely want to answer questions. I think there usually is a lot of questions out there once we talk. I will start off first, though, because I know she won't do it. If you haven't read this book, it's really good. I encourage you to get it, Local Investing. Local State is I'll describe it in two ways. One way is like a Match.com, if you're familiar with that website. We connect companies that are looking for funding. They could be startups, they could be small businesses, with local investors. That's one way people describe us. Another way is if you're familiar with E-Trade or Scottrade or any of those other investment websites, it's just like that, but instead of investing in stocks or mutual funds, you're investing in local companies. But to kind of back that up, investment in crowdfunding can be used in a lot of different ways. It can be used by startups to raise capital from individual investors. It can be used by small businesses. It can be used by growing companies. It really doesn't matter from that point. It can even be used like real estate. So instead of getting 24 individuals together in a room to facilitate that, that's another way you can use investment crowdfunding for. So it could be used to purchase a building. It can be used for farmland. There's a lot of different opportunities. And there's often different platforms that specialize in it. So as Amy had on her PowerPoint there, Local State typically works with startups and small businesses to help them raise funding. Fundrise is another platform. They specialize in real estate. So for that case, it would be a real estate developer could raise money to either purchase a project or develop a real estate project and raise those funds from individual investors. When raising funding via crowdfunding, investment crowdfunding, it's really done in, I'll call it kind of three main ways in my mind, but there's always other ones out there. But one could be the business gives up ownership of their company to individual investors in return for the investment. So 20% of our company goes to investors when they give us $200,000, for example. So investors would actually own a piece of that company. Another option is a loan, where investors would loan the company the funds they need, and then the business would pay them back, principal and interest over a time period. And then the third kind of most popular option is what I would consider revenue share, and we do a lot of these, and the company Bruin is doing this as well, where in return for the investment, the business pays back investors with a percentage of their revenue. So every month, the company might pay them back, 5% of our revenues every month are paid to investors until they get, some certain return back, typically like 1.5 times their investment. So those are really the three options that businesses can use, and often, or at least on local state, we help the business kind of decide what is the right path to take when raising funding. So if it is a loan or if it is revenue share or things like that, we can help them navigate that. And sometimes it's also a decision with their bank, for example, if they're getting a bank loan. We often see companies raising funds on local state where they're getting some of their funding from a bank loan and also some funding from other ways through investment crowdfunding. So it's definitely not an either or. In fact, I kind of view it the opposite. On the panel yesterday we had at the conference that Amy mentioned, we had a CEO of a bank, a community bank here in Michigan, who actually voiced support, very much support of crowdfunding. And he likes it because they can actually do loans they wouldn't really normally been able to do before. And they like the fact that if they can have 100 investors or 200 investors come in, that's 100 or 200 customers that the company now has. So it makes them feel really comfortable making that loan that maybe they would have normally provided to a company without crowdfunding. On the real estate side, it can be the same thing. It can be either equity ownership into that real estate property, where the owners actually, the investors own or co-own that building, for example, or it can also be a loan, is also very popular, where the real estate property brings in rent and then or income, and then it pays them out to investors because it's a loan. So every week or month or quarter, they might get a loan payment to them. So there's a lot of different ways to structure crowdfunding. I think some investment crowdfunding websites specialize in one version or the other, but for the most part, it really is flexible. So it really depends on the stage of the business, the type of business, and so forth when doing investment crowdfunding. From the investor point of view, it's the same way. At least on local state, we've had investors invest as little as $500 into a company. We've had people invest over $100,000 into a company. So it really is up to the perspective and how comfortable that investor is when investing into a company. Sometimes there are restrictions in the law. So for example, in mile, as Chris mentioned, there can be restrictions on the upper limit of how much someone can invest if they don't meet certain financial thresholds. But for the most part, I don't see many investors investing that high, because I think a lot of this should be about diversification, investing in many types of businesses in the community. So that's kind of a very high level about it, but I really want to more open up to questions about what people have, so I can kind of help answer from a platform point of view and things like that.
Can you just, before we do that, can you just kind of talk through what happens? Somebody comes to you, the piece that you do, and then kind of what that looks like from there.
Yeah, kind of how it works. Okay, so typically what happens is most of the companies that come to local state come through referral. It's a bank, a CPA, an attorney, small business development centers, things like that, where they have a company who they're working with that needs to raise funding. And like I said, it could be a startup or a small business. We have many small businesses that are growing, and as they grow, they want to add another location, or they want to hire more people, and they need more capital to do that as they're growing. So we see it all the time with both startups and small businesses. The businesses will apply and sign up on local state to raise funds. We do a screening of all the companies that go up and raise funding on local state. So it's not just no offense to Craigslist, it's not just a Craigslist listing of just any company that comes up. Rather, we screen them, work with them to see if they're ready to raise funding right now via investment crowdfunding. And we also then help them kind of get prepared. Because a lot of businesses, they're busy running their companies, and we don't want raising funds to take up their full-time job. So it includes everything from, we review their business plans, we do criminal background checks on the businesses. If they don't pass that, they're not going up to raise funding on local stake. We look at their financials. We will sometimes, do visits to their facilities or have kind of people in the community that we trust do visits, interview the management team to make sure that they are who they say they are when raising funds. And we also then work with them to see what's the best type of investment should they offer investors. So we really look at it from an investor point of view when working with the companies, kind of help them get prepared to raise the funds. Once they do this, and that can take 2 to 3 weeks, it can take 6 months. It really is how ready is the business to raise funds. But on average, we typically shoot for that to kind of be a 1-month period from when they first come to local stake to when they first start to raise funds. From then, we typically shoot for really a 60 to 90-day process of raising the funds. And that typically includes everything from trying to talk to the local newspapers about their fundraise. We usually encourage the business to do a kind of investor meet and greet. So Tecumseh, it hasn't been announced yet, but they're going to be doing a tasting event, things like that at their actual brewery location to meet the guys, kind of taste how good his beer is. I think that's a pretty good, important aspect of investing in brewers. If the beer doesn't taste good, maybe you should invest. So we also encourage things like that. While there is this great technology that can make things more efficient when investing, so it really does feel like you're investing pretty efficiently, we also understand this is local investing. One of the best things about it is you can meet the team, become customers, and visit them and do your own due diligence when investing as well. When investing, there's typically a lot of different options to do it, but the most popular one is either all online, electronically. You type in your account number and routing number, it links to your checking account, and you invest online. You can't invest with credit cards. I apologize. That would be considered margin, and that's technically illegal when investing online in private companies. We also allow individuals to do checks when they invest, or wires, or even self-directed IRA accounts. So if you want to invest through an IRA, you can also do that over local stake. All the funds when you invest, and this is actually per the law in Michigan, all the funds go into an FDIC-insured escrow account at a local bank until the company hits the minimum amount of funds that they're looking for. So in Tecumseh's example, their minimum is $150,000. So until people start investing, as they continue investing, all the funds are going to be held in a FDIC-insured bank account at a local bank, and they continue to stay there until they hit that minimum. Once they hit the minimum, the funds are then distributed to Tecumseh Brewing. If they do not hit the minimum, it's kind of an investor protection. All the funds are sent back to the investors by the bank, and everyone can kind of move on and invest in other companies. So that's kind of the process of making the investment. Now, after the fundraise, we also, and I think it's actually part of the law in Michigan, is the business is required to give quarterly updates to investors of how things are going, how's business going, how's financially, how business is doing, sales-wise, how's it doing. And I think that's really just great for everyone. I mean, I think it holds the businesses accountable as they're growing. If they need help, also the investors can kind of act as advisors to the company. But also it helps the investors understand how things are going. They're, can be notified of a upcoming, event, for example, or how can I help the business I'm invested in? We see that a lot with the companies that raise funding on local stake, is the investors want to help introduce customers to the new companies. They want to help them grow and add jobs. So I think that's a big portion of, even though it's required, I think a lot of the companies want to provide updates to their investors because it ultimately helps them out. And then also if there's any type of distributions like dividends or loan payments or revenue share payments, unfortunately you're not going to get a lot of checks in the mail. All that's done electronically over our platform. So really, we've tried to create a platform that is very secure. When you do something, it really does feel like what you would invest in on E-Trade or Scottrade, but you're investing in local private companies. So it's a high level. Like I said, I'm happy to answer questions that you guys have, either from the investor point of view, the business point of view, or anything.
So let's take any questions for any of us on any topic. So start over there.
Do you do anything on the marketing side during the investment period, or is that all based on the business?
It's a team effort, and I think you guys can speak to that too, but we work with them to kind of develop out a weekly schedule of what type of marketing ideas and concepts and plan for promoting the fact that they're raising funds. I think that's a big piece of the new Michigan legislation, is not only does it allow anyone to invest historically you couldn't really market the fact that you were raising funds. That's why, it's not like companies had never raised funding before in the past, just they couldn't market it. They always had to keep it to people they had a pre-existing relationship with, which is very difficult because not everyone knows the super wealthy people in town or has a wealthy aunt or uncle or things like that. So one of the big things of the new Michigan Invest Locally exemption is that they can market. So, so now you have to be, okay, well, how do we want to market the fact that we're raising funds, which I also think helps the business in general, because even if, I market people who don't want to invest, at least there's people who know about our brewery, know we're coming, things like that. So we heavily work with them to marketing. Now, I can't do their interview, so I know they did the interview with the Tecumseh Herald, but it's things like that that we work with them to plan out when they're raising funds. So like I said, it's not, if you're familiar with Kickstarter, it's very much on your own. We take a little bit opposite approach where we actively kind of have an advisor working with the business from start to you're funded, kind of helping them through the fundraise process. Because we know they're not experts, they're experts at their company. And that's what they should be, just like why they hire a CPA to do their taxes. Not everyone's an expert at their taxes. So we're kind of viewed as we want to help them with their fundraise when they're raising funds.
Just in the off chance that business does not survive,
sure.
where does the investor on your platform stand with respect to other creditors?
Yeah, no, we get this question a lot. It was asked at the conference yesterday. Businesses fail. Just like when you invest in the stock market, companies fail. It happens. There's nothing you can do about it. What we typically like to kind of view it as, now I'll start with one answer and then I'll finish up with your answer. Small businesses fail, but how can we try to reduce the failure rate is one thing that we actively look at on local state. In my opinion, at least, companies fail for three main reasons. There's always extra ones, but one is poor management of the company. Another one is lack of capital. And then really the third one, in my opinion, is lack of customers. So, lack of management we can't solve, but what we try to do is we try to hook them up with the right advisors when they raise funding. So that could be connecting them with the small business development centers or local CPAs, local attorneys. We also try to encourage investors to join an advisory board for the company, to where they can maybe meet quarterly and advise the company on how the growth is. So that's one way we try to solve that. Number two is capital. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of tons of franchises, but I think it's a good example of, when you walk into a Qdoba, for example, or something like that, Jimmy John's, you can tell when they, a franchise has put capital into their restaurant or company versus a local restaurant. Sometimes, we all probably know of one, you can tell when not a lot of capital has been put into it. And a lot of it is you can tell the difference between a well-capitalized company and an undercapitalized company. And I think that one of the largest reasons for failure is undercapitalized companies, right? They can't hire enough people, they can't bring in enough product, it doesn't look as well as maybe it should. So I think capital can help solve some of the risks of failure. I think the last one then is customers. And I kind of mentioned this earlier, but if I can have 100 customers or 200 customers, who I mean is 200 investors, that's 100, 200 customers times a multiple, because they're going to tell all their friends, their family members, to buy their beer or buy their product or about their service. So I think that's a big proponent of it, is these investors are going to be your biggest advocates, your biggest proponents for when you are actually operating your company or growing your company. So obviously we won't eliminate all companies, there's going to be failures, but I do think that investment crowdfunding can lower the failure rate. Now, if a company does go under, it's really going to depend on what your investment was in the company. So, for example, if you owned equity ownership in the company, it's going to depend on, does the company have a loan? Do they not have a loan from someone else? It's going to be on a very much a case-by-case basis. But typically, if you're in equity, just like if you're investing in the stock market, a lender or a bank is kind of going to have the first money out. That's kind of traditionally how it works. And then anything left over is split up among the equity investors. If it's a loan, assuming there's no other loans, like anything secured or things like that, you're going to be the first funds out if the company is going under, and then probably the founders or things like that would be next. Same thing with revenue share. Revenue share is treated like a loan when investing. But a lot of it's going to be on a case-by-case basis of, does the company have equipment? What do they have? Things like that. So it's a little bit hard to answer it, but it's going to be on a case-by-case basis when investing.
Do you do the whole gamut of crowdfunding from nonprofit through artists through
Sure.
pre-sold objects?
Yeah,
all the way up to
yeah. You're exactly right. There's a lot of what is crowdfunding. In fact, I don't like the term that much because it means so much. As Chris mentioned, there's rewards-based crowdfunding, which is like the Kickstarters, the Indiegogo. There's a lot of other sites that do that, where in return for your funds you get a perk like a T-shirt or a lot of different perks out there of what you can get, but it's a donation is really what it is. There's also nonprofit crowdfunding we've seen. And that's typically a perk as well or something like that. We don't do those. We are strictly investment crowdfunding for for-profit companies. But that's why I said there are other platforms out there. Even Fundrise, we really don't do real estate that much. So there's real estate specific platforms, investment crowdfunding platforms when doing it. But we're primarily focused on startups and small businesses that are raising funds for an investment.
I know this is very new, and so there's not a lot of track record, but what is the success rate among companies that have tried to raise money through one of these platforms compared to the overall number of companies, and what can you say about what makes campaigns successful?
One way to look at that is to look at Kickstarter, which probably has the highest volume of campaigns to look at. And again, this falls into the rewards category, so the thought process might be completely different, but they have about a 40% success rate.
On Kickstarter?
Yeah, so of all the, they just reached the $1 billion mark in pledges. So if people have pledged $1 billion to campaigns on Kickstarter, so about 40% of that has actually gone to fund things, and the rest were unsuccessful. So people got their money back, but you could probably
on our platform, it is relatively high. We've, I'd say, close to 100%. I think all but one so far has not gotten funding. They had investors lined up, but when you got down to terms and things like that, one of the investors wanted slightly different terms, and the business didn't want that. So, but that's a kind of a unique example. We don't expect 100% of the companies to raise funds. I think that would be impossible. I think we kind of shoot for kind of a 75%. It's kind of our long-term average of what we would expect to put into it. But with that said, I don't expect that in the overall industry to be that high. I mean, I think it's a lot of, on the successful campaigns on Kickstarter, it's not just we post it and they will come. I mean, it's like a politician raising funds, like a nonprofit raising funds. You have to put work into it to actually get the funding. People have to hear about it. So a lot of effort needs to go into it of marketing a fundraise, letting people know you're even doing it in order to have that fundraise successful. So.
And that's true on a state level too. Like you look at the very first two states that passed crowdfunding laws, Kansas and Georgia, there's been actually very few companies that have taken advantage of that because nobody knows about it. I mean, in all fairness, I guess those laws were done administratively, so they didn't go through the legislative process, so you didn't have the debate and the publicity around it. But I think they did a poor job of rolling it out, making people aware that this law exists, and there was very little education and support. And that's why I think what Michigan is doing with the Michigan Municipal League and all of Chris's efforts to really raise awareness, educate people, because there is a lot of education needed both for investors and for entrepreneurs who may not be prepared to have 100 or 200 new shareholders or lenders. So I think that's when I say I think Michigan can show how to do this right. I think they really are approaching it very systematically to make people aware of it and educate people, and then I think you'll have a higher success rate. Like Georgia has had one crowdfunded deal, successful deal, and Kansas has had maybe 5 or 6. That's it.
And I will also add, I think another piece of the success rate, I think, is everyone here. I think social media is really popular. I mean, I think it's utilizing that and leveraging that. I think as someone comes in and invests or is thinking about investing, and it's spreading the word. Because I think you all have a responsibility that if I do invest, I should tell other people about it. So one of the best ways to do that is Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn or email. Telling more people about it, I think, is what's necessary for crowdfunding to work. It's the crowd funding something. So it's really up to a lot of people to say, hey, this is really cool. Even if you're not going to invest, maybe I know someone who would think it's really interesting or things like that. So I think it's a big portion of this is leveraging the crowd, the social media, leveraging your networks to let everyone else know about this brewery raising funds or this whatever raising funds in the community.
Our company used to write Reg D offerings, but we couldn't advertise them, of course. But it was very expensive. How would you contrast the cost of doing something with your company versus doing an old Reg D offering where you had to go out and find your mother's favorite cousin to buy the property?
So typically when companies raised funds in the past, they often went to an attorney and they'd go pay everywhere from, depends where you live, and what attorney I guess you go to, but you'd pay somewhere between, I've heard people paying $5,000 to $10,000 for a kind of the investment documents you need to go raise funding. It's not usually just a one-page document you hand an investor and they sign it. It's usually a little more established than that. I've heard businesses paying $75,000 to get the investment documents that they need just to start finding investors. So it really is everywhere in between there of what companies will traditionally pay. And I don't think investment crowdfunding necessarily eliminates that entirely. In fact, I would still say that businesses should counsel their attorneys and things like that when raising funds via investment crowdfunding. But then it stopped, right? And then it was kind of up to the business saying, okay, go try to raise funds, and if you're successful, great. If you're not, great. Kind of up to you what's going on. Typically, how investment crowdfunding websites are set up, and I'll say crowdfunding in general as well, is there's usually like a fee in the beginning sometimes to get started, whether and like local stake is $500 or $1,000, and that's usually to show buy-in with the business. We've had companies before that have started to raise funds, and a lot of work goes into getting them ready, and then they stop, right? And that's a lot of different things that you typically want to get, like if you're an attorney, you want to get a retainer or a CPA. Typically that's a process crowdfunding goes down as well, is to see how serious is the company that's looking to start raising funds. Because it is a serious undertaking. It's not just something that, if you're going to bring on, a new bank loan or investors, it's something that the company should be committed to. And then typically, like I said, whether it's crowdfunding or local stake, they're going to take a percentage of the funds raised at the end. So typically a success fee when the company actually raises their funds or when the project raises their funds. If you're a broker dealer, so like Kickstarter, for example, they typically charge, I think it's around 5-ish% of the funding raised. So if you raise, $1,000 or $1 million, it's about 5% of that goes to Kickstarter for essentially renting their using their platform, right? Kind of like when you sell something on eBay, there's a cost once you sell something. On local stake, it's the same way. We take a success fee on the funding raised. It's typically around 5 to 7.5% overall of the funding raised, and that's kind of all inclusive. So that includes escrow, that includes all, someone working with you the whole step of the way, and it's only charged when you actually raise your funds. We've kind of tried to, if you will, align our interests with that of the business, meaning if they're not successful in raising their funds, there's no fee paid, because it's not successful. If it is, platform worked, everyone was successful, great, then the success fee is paid. So that's typically how it works. And that's on local stake and other crowdfunding, investment crowdfunding platforms. That's pretty general how it would work, at least right now.
It's less expensive, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think it definitely would be. And it's definitely less expensive in the beginning. I mean, I know you guys could talk about that. Just piece of it is, I tell you, because you guys raised money before. How much? I know you don't have to say here.
$45,000, but we spent over $8,000 on attorney's fees to get an offering memo done.
And that was before they even started raising funds. Versus I think you guys paid $1,000 to get started. But so it's like, it definitely is a little bit different of how they raise their funds and how much it costs. Yeah, it's
And there's also a whole ecosystem forming around crowdfunding, which I find really interesting. There's something Disclosure Dragon was just announced, and an interactive tool that will help you, by answering questions, get to that first draft of your private placement memo, right? So it's not the finished product, but you're cutting out a lot of attorney fees or accountant fees by getting to a rough draft of that, and then you can have it reviewed by someone. So there are a lot of products like that that are streamlining everything that goes into this. Hopefully, in the efforts of that, bringing the price down.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, Gary, go ahead.
Go ahead. Can a business crowdfund, or could a foundation crowdfund?
Okay, so just traditional crowdfunding, as you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like Kickstarter or Indiegogo, things like that, they can definitely use. I mean, a foundation could use.
No, Kickstarter is very particular. They will only fund creative projects. You may be a business, but it has to be a project.
Well, no, I'm sorry. What I was wondering is, what if I own a business and I wanted to write a check for $500 from my business?
Gotcha.
And,
Yes.
And be an investor that way, or could a foundation, a Kiwanis Club has a foundation,
Yes.
and if we found a project that might be attractive to the revitalization of our community, could we crowdfund?
100%. Yes. So you could definitely invest in both Kickstarter campaign. I think you can. I don't see why you wouldn't be able to do it in a Kickstarter crowdfunding campaign, donation-based, or definitely investment-based. I know you can. In fact, I would encourage foundations and community foundations and things like that who want to support their community beyond just giving to nonprofits. I think as I look, towards what's going to make communities be successful in the long term, it is small businesses. They create a lot of jobs. They attract other companies to work there. I know someone in Detroit actually mentioned this to me. That big company that's going to hire a lot of different young people, or even tech company or whatever it is. They don't want to be in a neighborhood that has nothing around. All their employees want small businesses to go to. They want coffee shops. They want restaurants. They want culture, and a lot of culture is driven by small businesses. And they're not going to come to a random place or an empty downtown and just open up shop and try to hire 10,000 people. It's not going to work that way. So I would even say that for community foundations, they should really think about it. If they care about the long-term aspects of the community and the economic benefits, they should. I think it's really interesting to have them invest part of their portfolio. Because a lot of foundations have investment portfolios that range from $500,000 to, I know, like the Indianapolis Community Foundation has $500 million in an investment portfolio. Why couldn't they take 1% of that, 5%, whatever that they feel comfortable with, and invest that in local companies that, it's not like they're just granting that money away. It's actually you're investing it in that company with the, plan being they're going to get paid back, and you can reinvest that into other local companies. So I would very much encourage foundations to get involved, or if you are on a board, to kind of bring that up.
And that's what I was trying to get at with this slide, right? So why would, when you think about crowdfunding, if a business gets, 1,000 people or 10,000 people to chip in and give money to this idea or this business, well, that's a great validation of the demand for it, of the idea. So if I were a foundation or a corporation or any of these people around there, I would say, wow, well, that's just done a lot of my homework for me, right? There's people think this is a good idea. There's a lot of support for it. People willing to put money into it. So maybe you come in and you do that last 10%, or you match funds for somebody who's successfully raised money. Really, I think crowdfunding is like one great form of due diligence.
Bob, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just going to say, let's say, for instance, we're an existing business and we'd like maybe to purchase a piece of equipment that we cannot afford right this second. And we wanted to do this, but then wouldn't investors have like a misperception that this company's not doing well enough to buy their own equipment?
No, I think it's actually the opposite. I think for most investors, they understand of how companies want to expand, how they're growing, right? I mean, to buy that big piece of equipment, it takes a lot of money. Just, you might not have $200,000 sitting in the bank to buy that piece of equipment or whatever the cost is. I think if you can clearly communicate why you're buying it, right? You're telling the story of why we're buying it and what it's going to do for our company once we have it. I think that's what gets investors wanting to invest in local companies, is they want to help that company grow, and they know that they might not be able to afford that big piece of equipment. They could cut down the cost, right, maybe in half if they buy that versus using a very outdated way to do it because they just don't have the large capital outlay to do it. So I think it's quite the opposite. I think a lot of investors want to help companies expand. Especially, I think established companies are great for investment crowdfunding because you can actually tap your customer base, right? I mean, take an existing restaurant, for example. They could put a sign on every single table in the restaurant, or they could put a sign on their door, and they can go on their social media pages and announce that you've loved our company, you've eaten here, whatever it is, and we're opening up another location, or we're adding on a deck, and all that, whatever it could be.
No,
and
they can do that in state crowdfunding
Yep.
and Title II under 5 or 6
Yeah.
C, but not Title III.
Correct. Yeah. You'd have to follow the laws that would allow you to do that. But yeah, for the Michigan Invest Locally exemption, I think it's all about reaching out to your existing customer base to leveraging it, I will, and invest. Like I was talking to someone yesterday about like Bell's Brewery. I think they could probably get a lower rate of return, cost on a loan than if they went to a bank, because I think they'd have so many people who want to help them grow and see them expand in Michigan and things like that, than if they went to a bank and tried to get a bank loan. So I think it's things like that that you could kind of tap into your affinity customer base to raise funds, whether it's a loan or equity ownership or whatever it is.
Charlie could do all. Yeah, sort of a follow-up question to the previous one about pension funds and other municipal investments or local government. We've had some preliminary conversation in Washtenaw County about some of the county pension fund going into some of these activities. Are you aware of any legal reasons why that wouldn't work?
I would say that, so I actually worked at the Indiana Public Retirement System, which is the pension for the entire state, all the teachers, employees, $27 billion. For them, they're invested in venture capital, they're invested in private equity right now. So it's not like it's any new type of risk more than bonds. In fact, I would even say a lot of foundations and smaller pensions are invested in private equity and venture capital and things like that. So I think from a risk perspective, no. If anything, I think that local investment adds another level of diversification. That, what's really happening in Russia right now, where I have our emerging market investments, it's not really affecting what's happening, in Adrian right now. So I think if anything, I think it brings some diversification. I think the biggest challenge for foundations or pensions is deciding which companies to invest in and how they're actually going to make the investment. Like, is every company that gets up to 95% of funding from Adrian that actually gets the funding, or how does it work? We're talking to a kind of right now in Indiana that's going to be doing any company that raises funds on local stake from their county or is going to be starting up in their county. They're going to invest an automatic $5,000 or $10,000 into their fundraise. So there's just some logistics like that. But I don't see why, at least from a pension, I don't see why you couldn't do it. But maybe there could be a reason why state, county funds, if it's, set up a certain way or labeled a certain way. I know there's always restrictions from a political point of view, how funds can be used. Maybe there's a reason there, but I think from a pension, I don't see why. It's invest in stocks, bonds, mutual funds already. So.
What about individual IRAs or individual pensions? I don't know if the laws are out there. The laws allow us to do this. Take some of that.
There was self-directed IRA.
Yeah, we allow investors to invest in a self-directed IRA, which basically means instead of giving it, most IRAs have your menu for you, right? Hey, here are the 10 mutual funds or things like that you can invest in. There's also accounts out there called self-directed IRAs, and that allows you to invest in whatever you want. You can buy a house with it, a rental house, you can live in it. But you can buy all types of investments in it, and it's not just the menu that maybe you were limited to before. And that includes local private companies. We have investors right now on local states investing in their IRAs into private companies. And if anything, I'm not giving tax advice here, but there's a lot of tax reasons why you might want to invest in private companies or real estate in your IRAs. Plus, a lot of people's funds are in IRAs, right? And it's just for most of the public, especially non-accredited investors, most of their investment funds are in IRA accounts and things like that.
Other questions? Yeah.
Chris, you had mentioned before that there's some regulations for the investor into the Michigan law. What about for the company raising the funding? Are there requirements from a standpoint of disclosure or publications that have to be made to participate or to raise funds?
Yeah, there are, and why don't you talk about those?
Yeah, there definitely are.
He's actually doing it.
Yeah, so we did it with the Tecumseh Brewing. There very much are disclosures you have to follow. They're all laid out in the law, but it's everything from certain paragraphs you need to have on like the front cover page of the document you're going to provide investors, to even there's a page you have to have where the investors have to initial next to 5 things acknowledging, right, I could lose all my money, this is high, things like that, just disclosures that they want investors to understand what they're getting into, which that's our goal too. It's not like we want someone to invest in something that they are not understanding they're going to actually invest into. So there definitely are disclosures they have to follow, but it is really well laid out in the Michigan law what they have to just put into for investors. There's also a requirement that every company that is raising funds has to submit a 1-page application to the state of Michigan with a fee notifying them that they're raising funds and include all the information they're giving to investors. And they have to submit that to the state as well as part of the process.
And that process, again, it's not onerous. That was one of the great things about this law was that it's not so burdensome that small investors, that small businesses, that small capital raises were not possible. So that's one of the beauties of it. I think that it actually is quite simple and quite clear. It's not so burdensome that you have to hire a team of attorneys to work through it. Sorry, Mike. But
you could hire an attorney.
You could, just one. Yeah, all you need is one great attorney.
If you wanted to do a self-direct, or someone wanted to do a self-directed IRA, would they do that through local stake, or that would be through some investment advisory firm who would then use you?
Yeah, there's typically investment advisory firms that do. We don't hold any customer funds or things like that. We do have ones that we, recommend out to investors if they ask. But yeah, we do not offer IRA accounts necessarily, if you will, like maybe a financial advisor or things like that.
You only get one more question.
Only one more question.
One more question.
Have you ever funded an L3C? You know, the Chevy Volt was funded by an L3C in Michigan. And I'm wondering whether you ever used that mechanism, because that goes along the line of the question there.
Sure. We've not yet raised any funding for an L3C yet, primarily because, well, in all the other states we've been in, L3Cs are not a thing.
There's only 9 states.
Yeah, but Michigan is, great, kind of on the forefront of that. So no, I'm looking forward to it. I really don't think it's too much different than really raising funds for an LLC, I guess, in my perspective. So I'm very open to having an L3C, raise funds on those things, but we have not yet.
Nonprofits can put money into a PRI, which is a program-related investment. They can put money in those things, whereas other groups can't. I mean, you can't put.
You need to have a conversation with them.
Yes, I'm excited for them. I really am.
Other questions? Yeah.
We kind of got a unique opportunity that's just come about. We actually do video production and to basically help individuals develop maybe a product. And my associate actually worked with a gentleman at Consumer Powers, and because he does the videography part-time. Well, the situation we've got ourselves into, they've developed this unique light where it's solar powered, and basically what it does, you put it in the ground, it retracts in the daytime, so it's not unsightly. Then during the night, it pops itself out of the ground like a sprinkler, turns itself on. So it's a very unique green product. Well, it's turned from us developing the product, it's turned now into us maybe marketing the product, and he's going to give us a part of that. So I guess my question would be is, we would be looking to raise funds, even though, let's say we don't own the company, we are given rights to not only market it, but sell it now. And then are we allowed to do crowdfunding to basically develop that leg of it. Because they're only interested in Home Depot and Lowe's, that's it. So we were looking much larger as soon as they offered the opportunity to us, because I think there's a lot larger market out there, quite honestly. So I'll be able to do that.
I think you'd have to have probably your own company.
Right, our own LLC.
Yeah, and then you could raise, investors are just going to have to understand, and you would present to investors that information of, this is our license, right, here's our contract that says we are licensing this product, we have our own LLC that's licensing it from that company. Yeah, I mean, that's not an issue at all. We're just, you would just have to present the information to investors, just like a bank would ask, for that type of information as well if they were doing a loan, for example.
Now, is it the LL3 or what would you? LC. Is that a green products or what's that?
That's an entirely different issue.
Is it?
Yeah, that's more of choosing what type of business entity.
A social benefit type of a.
Gotcha.
Any more? Okay. Again, you can talk to any of us if you want to. I wanted to say a couple things. First of all, I want to thank Amy is actually here sponsored by several organizations, including several in the room. So Michael Saber from Robinson Kirby O'Connell, they're the platinum sponsor. And then gold sponsors are OSB Community Bank. Lenawee now is a gold sponsor. Who else is a gold sponsor? Local Stake is a gold sponsor. I don't know if did you know that?
I didn't know we were gold.
Gold, yeah, gold sponsors. And so those guys. And then we want to thank the center that sponsored the event, the Adrian Chamber that sponsored the event, and the City of Adrian that sponsored the event space. So there are materials. Some on the side, if you haven't grabbed them, please grab them. There's a box there. Throw your business card in if you want to hear follow-up information. And again, we'll be hanging around for a little bit if you want to have some personal conversations. Mr. Taylor.
I just want you to know that Amy had a transportation sponsor earlier this week.
Don Taylor, transportation sponsor. And actually on that front, I'm looking for an Amy Cortez transportation sponsor for tomorrow. So she's from New York and she doesn't drive. She doesn't have a driver's license. So she was just going to take public transportation from Adrian to Detroit. And you know what? There isn't any. So she's got some ideas. So, she could crowdfund it, that's true. The other piece, we have a couple of videographers in the room, and one of the things that those of you that are going to run crowdfund are going to need to do is shoot some great video. So we've got, his name is Cork
Media.
Cork Media.
Hey, real quick, Chris, everyone who I spoke to before the crowdfunding session started, could you meet me out in the hallway
Right, we want to do a quick follow-up interview with you guys, and then I know WTOL is here from Toledo. Thank you very much for coming. And so we've got the first business guys will be here, and they'll be glad to be interviewed at length by you, and appreciate you guys being here. So thank you very much. Give yourselves all a round of applause. Go out there and talk crowdfunding. Thank you.
Oh, this is a wonderful meeting, especially with Chris Miller. He really knows what he's doing in this area. And there's so much potential. And people like, what was it, Kevin Hitchens, with the founder of the Stake, a local Stake, and also Amy Cortez. She really knows what she's talking about. And you ought to get her book. It's really neat. But I was really pleased to see, one, the interest of everybody here in it, and all the potential that's in that room alone.
Now, my impression of crowdfunding is that it's going to be, here it is in Michigan, a historic way of investing locally within your community, and it's something that I'm going to be participating in.
Cool. Well, thank you again. Crowdfunding was done through Chris Miller. It was a great event that I had. With doing so, I'm really looking forward to getting involved with crowdfunding and being a company to help out Lenawee and the whole Michigan in general to keep pushing this as a production and be able to help on the social media side of things to really get the crowd involved and get 80%, even 90% of the crowd to get involved, and we only do 10%. So I'm looking forward to the next couple of years and the journey that it takes up place. And hey, I'm excited. Let's do this.
The presentation actually was really informational. I never really knew what crowdfunding was, but the impression I get is that it brings a community together, and that it would be really advantageous for a company to use this. So hopefully in the future we'll see what could possibly do for us. We're an existing business, so I'm not quite sure exactly how that's going to work, but we're definitely going to look into it.
So after hearing today's presentation, it just reinvigorates our excitement about being part of this initiative, looking at different ways to partner with other local businesses, both through crowdfunding as well as traditional financing. So it just reinforces that we're committed to the community and providing opportunities for businesses to get started or to grow.
This session, I think, was great. The crowdfunding is going to have a great impact on the local communities, and it's going to be something that a lot of small business owners can benefit from.